Charles. Slow and delirious.
Indeed. That's Joe Biden on a good day.
Exactly. So we got another one of our walk and talk videos here, and we're starting at a spot that we've been to before. It's, in all fairness, we should mention that just prior to arriving here, one of these ambulances sped off. I don't know if that was due to a medical emergency or perhaps they saw us coming. But there's still a lot of ambulances parked here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I see immediately. Oh, there's a bunch of EMTs walking around.
Are they social distancing? Are they wearing masks?
Not really masks, I think I saw, but that's social distancing.
So where we are, for people who don't know the city, is we're on 23rd Street and 10th Avenue, just cross 10th Avenue, which is the far west side. This used to be a warehouse district. Not a lot of people used to live here, but in the last 20 years or so, particularly in the last 10, a lot of new construction has come up. And Lord knows who's going to buy these apartments or who's going to rent these apartments. They're very far away from mod cons, as they say in the UK, modern conveniences. Not a lot of restaurants, not a lot of grocery stores, not a lot of schools all the way over here.
Right. Not even good access to the subways necessarily, or kind of difficult to get a taxi all the way here on the west side.
I don't think there is a subway stop here yet.
They added that new one over by the Javits where those cops were on one of my early walks.
I know, but we're on 23rd Street. I mean,
yeah, you're right.
That's 11 blocks away.
You're right.
So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a little bit of the west side. We're going to walk down the west side. But before we get into all that, I just want to congratulate the art department once again for the
Thanks.
Fantastic posters. You're just, every one of them is a masterpiece. And since, we did take perhaps a victory lap prematurely on Friday with a special report where we said that Joe Biden would never make it possibly to even being the nominee. Around the time we were doing that broadcast, Biden did...
busy insulting every black person in America?
Well, on so many different levels. I mean, you see, when you look at his behavior, forget his politics. I don't think anybody knows his politics. He's been, his support for the crime bill was correctly...
Clinton's crime bill.
Well, yeah, correctly called out by Kamala Harris and others as disproportionately operating against African American Hispanic communities. And he unabashedly supported that crime bill. He's never really effectively apologized for it. So to go on that particular show, which is well known, that Charlemagne the God is well known.
That's the podcast, right?
Right. Well, it's a very successful podcast, and more than just a podcast. I think it's actually a radio show, isn't it?
I'm not familiar with the guy before all this.
But normally people are, compete for the opportunity to get on that show, and they stay on for the whole show. And Biden, in the middle of his interview, tried to cut it short, I think, because he was being asked tough questions that he couldn't answer.
Really?
Yeah. And then his first excuse was in that gigantic 10,000 square foot house that he lives in with his wife. I mean, and of course he cares about global warming and his climate footprint and all that.
Right.
There weren't two separate rooms where he could do one interview, and Dr., of course she's in education, PhD in education, Dr. Joe Biden wanted to do some other interviews. So his excuse initially was, I have to cut this short because Dr. Biden needs to use the room.
I see. That's
so
stupid.
He can't even manage his 10,000 square foot house properly.
Yes.
Right? You can't go outdoors, and this man wants to be president of the United States. And then, so when he gets challenged, what you'll notice, he's done it time and again. People ask a good, tough question, and he gets right in your face. And he said, come on, man. Look at my record. And that comment, I'm not even going to repeat his comment because it's so stupid. And this is a man who, it's not like Trump, where were some reasonable questions you could ask when he was running about why are we certain that a successful billionaire builder can be an effective president of the United States? Those are fair questions. In Biden's case, he can't say, you know, I have no political experience. That's all he has, is political experience.
Right.
And to manage that interview that way, creating the sound bites and the opportunities that the Trump people instantly harvested. We better instantly see Charles run. Interestingly capitalized upon. It's just stupid. And then we did, what's your phrase? Luck is the something?
Residue of design.
Residue.
I like that phrase. I think that's actually Benjamin Franklin.
Well, it's a good point. So we're doing our enthusiasm curbed, and lo and behold, over the weekend, we finally agree, Michael Moore and you and I finally agree on something, not your Michael Moore.
The non-true pundit Michael
The
Moore.
large Michael Moore.
Well-fed.
Right, extremely well-fed Michael Moore. He
Charles,
basically,
look at that.
what? The sailboat or?
Social distance. Keep 6 feet apart. And
Nobody's
wear a face
doing it.
covering. That's new. And wear a face covering. That's not even what he said. He said to wear the face covering if you're not able to stay
Right.
6 feet apart. Sorry, you were telling us Joe Biden is an idiot. Please carry on.
Well, there's no news content. No news content in that. Do we want to go out along the river, Jason? Do we want to go in and
Sure.
around?
The thing I'm trying to do is to check if we're live, and this other phone is not cooperating. I hope we are live.
To go around, we'd have to go that
We'll
way.
go wherever you'd like to go,
Yeah.
Charles.
Let's go around so we're near the water.
Sure.
We give people a view of the, and then we can, from the water, we can see the new construction better. So now look at these. What are these? These are swamp.
Canadian geese.
The
These are the same birds that were the bane of Sully Sullenberger. The Canadian geese flew into the engines of that U.S. Air, right? Wasn't he
Which
U.S. Air?
landed here. Was it here or the East River?
No, it was right here.
Yeah. And these also were interrupting Joe Biden's virtual town halls. The ones that
He has Canadian geese at his house?
apparently, yeah. That's he's got a lot of birds and bird brains at his house.
Right.
Do you want me on the other side or?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if we can figure out if we're live here.
Yeah. So what I was saying is Michael Moore, the documentary libtard
Right.
crony socialist, actually said that there's no enthusiasm for Joe Biden. And I think that's true. I mean, this is a fatal, I mean, far be it from me to give advice to the Democrat Party or for that matter to the Republican Party, but you have a reality. Amongst the Democratic group, you've got the Bernie bros and sisters who can see through the Biden bullshit. And that you're fooling none of them by suggesting that AOC is going to be in charge of Joe Biden's climate policy. She's not going to stay aboard for that very long at all.
I just don't think she should be in charge of anything. She's making margaritas on Periscope and
Whoa.
no one's curbing their dog there, Charles. That's amazing that I saw that before stepping in it.
So, for people who haven't been over to the this part of New York, I mean,
It's
it
very
really
nice.
it could be extremely nice, and you would have thought that the geniuses who run the city would have said, why don't we put restaurants here, along the river? Why don't we encourage people to come out here and breakfast, lunch, and dinner during the summer months? And in certain cases, you can do enclosed restaurants with heaters and stuff like that in the winter. This is really very pretty.
Well, they'd rather have everybody stay inside, close their businesses, not talk to any other people, and become afraid of or telling on anyone they know.
Right. So back on Michael Moore. So he says there's no enthusiasm for Biden. Hillary decides that it's a genius idea to do a fundraiser for Biden. And she actually raises $2 million overnight in theory.
What?
So I get a Trump email. I get many Trump emails. But good job, man.
It's hotter than I thought.
Yeah, over here. Yeah. So I get a Trump email saying, crooked Hillary's raised $2 million for Biden. We've got to do better than that. Now, who knows how much money they're actually going to raise off of crooked Hillary's decision? But The Democrat Party it will be lucky to carry Delaware if Biden is the final nominee. I mean, he is just an atrocious candidate. I think after our show on Friday, I was looking around and I noticed that on CNBC, Joe Biden actually went on Squawk Box, which is the morning show. And there's a very level-headed guy who tries to stay out of politics. He's very coy about his political leanings. But he's a very smart guy, Joe Kernan. And Kernan's looking at Joe, trying to answer a question. And Joe's answer is, listen, man, I'm the only person who can beat Joe Biden.
Oh.
I mean, you know, the ads write themselves.
It's unbelievable.
The ads just write themselves.
Charles, forgive me if this is disgusting, but are you noticing an alarmingly large amount of canine fecal matter that is not being cleaned up?
I wouldn't be so certain that it's canine only.
Right, but I mean, it seems like people are, you know, certain things are, as we've been observing since the beginning, breaking down. I don't think I knew they had a carousel here as well.
Yeah, I didn't either. So should we go there and down? Or, oh, we go this way, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, this is a nice spot for people who maybe haven't seen.
Is that your yacht over there? Boat across the river?
Oh no, mine's much smaller than that. Look, there's an ad for some hospital.
Thank you, essential workers. Yeah.
So people are going on Spirit cruises, as per Anthony Fauci. This is Chelsea Piers right here.
Yeah, is that Bill's yacht?
Hornblower, Serenity. That would be Monica's.
Yeah, I guess we keep
I
going
mean,
this
Charles,
way.
this is pretty empty for this.
Let's go back this way.
Sure. But this area is usually filled with people reveling.
Yeah, rollerblading,
Exactly.
bicycling. In front of you is Chelsea Piers, which used to just be a big pier, but now the interior has been turned into a gigantic play and party space for kids.
And a gym and everything.
Yeah.
Golf stuff.
And back in my childhood, decades ago, this entire area, there was an overhead roadway between where we are and the city part. And it fell into, it was called the West Side Highway, and it ultimately just went derelict. And it took a long time.
Radio interference over here.
Okay. Probably because there's so many boats.
Maybe, yeah. But isn't that what has become the High Line in part? That
Yeah.
was the overhead, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So they restored that in like 2000 or something, or 2010.
Can't go through here.
Cannot go through?
It's locked.
Well, we could go through this way.
Yeah. So there's been some very serious developments in the last 24 hours that we weren't aware of as much.
What?
Well, George Papadopoulos
Oh, yeah.
gave quite an interview with Rudy Giuliani in his Common Sense program. Fabian Chalandon tweeted it out, so I retweeted it. And I watched it carefully. I urged you to watch it. What did you think of it?
on the criminals. Hang on a second. That's become the most dangerous aspect of going outside. Those cops could have just grabbed us and beaten us up. I thought it was the most credible I've seen Papadopoulos appear, because
Yeah.
when he tweets, he seems very like he's trying to be this, I don't know how to describe it, but he was more humble and described how he was essentially he's not a known guy before this all happened, and it's very unusual for Alexander Downer, who by his own admission, he had no idea who the guy was before
Right.
he even met him. It was just, he's literally like this young guy who happens to be working for the campaign, and all these, high-level international diplomats want to have drinks with him and get to know him and do
Right.
all kinds of stuff, which is very odd.
Yeah.
And he acknowledged that, which I thought was interesting.
Well, yeah, it was very interesting because it went into the timeline, refreshing my recollection of things I should have remembered but didn't. For example, on May 6th, Papadopoulos claims that Andrew Napolitano said on Fox that he was hearing reports that Hillary's non-secure server and unvetted devices, information crossing that had been obtained one way or another, whether they were hacked or leaked or whatever, but they were in the public domain. And that fell just almost exactly with Donald Trump in that time frame, May 6th, 7th, through the end of May, was almost exactly when it became inevitable that Donald Trump would be the Republican nominee, assuming he made it through the convention. So to weave in the early meetings in April that Papadopoulos talks about, March and April, the contact with Joseph Massoud, Stefan Halper, the job offer that this Papadopoulos character got to be a director of a director of an institute in London with qualifications that are, I don't think very strong.
Was he even 30 at the time?
I don't know.
He's pretty young.
You're very young. Not very experienced, and whatever experience he had seemed to be in arranging conferences, which is not, that's not the kind of experience.
Not a high-level operator.
How many Mountain Dews do we want versus Chablis, that kind of stuff.
Well, let me add some detail to what you're saying, because the devices, I think, are more important than we might realize. David Hawkins has been talking a lot about this company Phantom Secure that was busted in 2018 by the FBI.
Right.
Now, it's a Vancouver-based company, and that's what ties it into a lot of David Hawkins' research, but it's very closely connected to a former member of the RCMP, a guy by the name of Cameron Ortis, who has now been arrested and is in jail.
Really?
He might have been released on house arrest, but this guy was a very high-level civilian in the RCMP. Right. He was brought on by Bob Paulson, who is basically the Christopher Wray of the RCMP.
Oh, wow.
And so Paulson, is very involved. He brought in Cameron Ortis. He fast-tracked him through the RCMP. There's a lot of controversy among some of the people who were in the RCMP for a long time that this civilian guy was moving up there so rapidly. And when they arrested Ortis, went into his house, there was like 30 computers there that when they tried to examine the computers, they began bleach bidding themselves.
Wow.
So it's speculated by David Hawkins that this Phantom Secure operation was very closely linked to these guys at the RCMP. And what Phantom Secure was doing, Charles, was modifying BlackBerries. And we know that Hillary Clinton did all this stuff with buying BlackBerries on eBay. And, it makes a lot of sense. If this Phantom Secure company is modifying BlackBerries, there might only be a limited number of models of BlackBerry that their modifications work with.
Right.
So that would be a motivator for Hillary Clinton to buy a used BlackBerry.
More than one.
More than one. Like, why would she do that? She said, she liked the keyboard better, but I don't really believe that, because there's a lot of legacy technology products that had this or that feature that I liked, but the newer products, even when they're missing something, generally have more stuff that if you want to stay current with the device, you have to get it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of evidence to indicate that the BlackBerry modifications, all this stuff that we heard about with Imran Awan destroying BlackBerries, that seems more linked to this Phantom Secure company than anything else. And as I start talking to people like David Hawkins about this, and more information starts coming out, the social engineers that have been attacking me with nonsense start to try to deflect away from some of the important things that I'm talking about, like Alan Dershowitz. There's a social engineer. It's actually, I'm not going to mention these guys because they want me to do that to help promote them and what they're doing. But I think people know that there's a 13-foot tall collective of brothers that have been on me for 3 years with nonsense and lies. And today the question was posed, why was I asking Dershowitz about Ghislaine Maxwell, In-N-Out Burger, and the New York Post when I should have been asking him about military-level encryption on Joe Biden BlackBerries?
Yeah.
Well, to answer that stupid question, first of all, I don't have any reason to believe that Alan Dershowitz would have direct knowledge of military encryption or anything having to do with Joe Biden. And I was asking him about Ghislaine Maxwell, the New York Post, and In-N-Out Burger, because the New York Post has run several bizarre stories about In-N-Out Burger. In-N-Out Burger attempted to threaten me when I tried to ask them to release evidence that could help the FBI locate Ghislaine Maxwell, who's potentially a foreign espionage agent trying to do stuff to our country. And when I asked Dersh about it, he goes on Fox News, which is owned by the same people as the New York Post. So I think there's something going on there, Charles.
It could well be. Could well be. Well, just going back into to Papadopoulos a little bit. So he revealed that he was targeted by Alexander Downer. And thankfully, the real story on Alexander Downer is starting to come out. In that video,
The Giuliani one?
the Giuliani video, Papadopoulos points out that Malcolm Turnbull, who had been the leader of Australia when Downer was in the position as ambassador to the UK, that person claimed in a book recently published that the Australian government knew nothing about, in theory, knew nothing about what Downer had been up to, that it was a personal mission.
Right, yes.
Well, except that Downer is a wealthy person who was deeply in bed with the Clintons. And what I took away from the Papadopoulos discussions,
got a sound problem there, Charles. See, I'm disappointed because, let's go over here. We have a new software update today that I had hoped might address this. And there's something I wanted to tell you about this software update, Charles. It's not an update to... Okay, sorry. Are we back? Okay,
we're back?
I think we're back.
So
it's just real quick on this software update because I think you're going to find this interesting.
Okay.
It's a software update to the iPhone operating system. Apple just released iOS 13.5, and it did not fix our audio problem, but it has introduced a contact tracing API.
Oh my God.
An API is an application programming interface. That means anybody making programs for the iPhone can now integrate contact tracing into it. So there's been no vote about this. It's just, it's there. If you're using an iPhone and you upgrade to 13.5, and they don't even really tell you about this, you now have contact tracing stuff on your phone. So I didn't know that until after I did the upgrade. But I thought you'd find that interesting.
Does not sound good. So
back to Downer.
Sorry? Yeah, back to Downer. So what Papadopoulos reveals is the degree to which, it reminds us in that interview, the degree to which David Cameron, the leader of the UK, was, and the then leader of Italy, and Downer, all seemed to be involved in a coordinated attempt to try to induce Papadopoulos to ask, as a representative of the Trump campaign, for damaging information on Hillary, so as to create, in theory, a predicate to investigate the Trump campaign. And I found Papadopoulos' account very credible.
I agree.
And I was taken by several facts. I was taken by the fact that...
What is this?
I don't know.
Have you ever seen that before?
It's a carousel. It looks like it's a carousel or something.
Yeah, it's a ride of some kind.
Maybe it's an alien spacecraft.
Sorry, he's very credible.
Credible, and he revealed that maybe stuff he shouldn't have, that Durham had investigated some of the people he was talking about 3 or 4 times, that Durham was very interested, supposedly, according to Papadopoulos, and Giuliani, who nodded like the Cheshire Cat, grinned like the Cheshire Cat. So it strikes me that Durham may well be a lot farther along than we all assume. And so, and I think with regard to Papadopoulos and the origin of the investigation in the Trump campaign, that is a criminal investigation. We saw that, watch yourself here, we saw that...
well, I'm just looking at this. We saw that what?
We learned that Emmett Sullivan, I think already disgraced
Oh,
judge,
yeah.
has retained, it looks to me like criminal defense counsel. David Gregory's wife, Beth Wilkinson, has created a firm that focuses on white-collar defense in criminal matters, and I think also civil defense. And I think I read somewhere that people in the crowd will be able to find this for themselves. I thought I read months ago that Barack Obama and some of the alleged co-conspirators in this plot had also retained Beth Wilkinson. I believe I saw that, but maybe people can go and check for themselves and send me an email if I'm right or if I'm wrong. So I find that very unusual, that a judge with the years on the bench that this judge has would behave the way he's behaving and then find himself in a pickle and say, you know what, maybe I better hire a defense counsel. I mean,
It seems, I mean, it's like one unprecedented development after the next in this case of Michael Flynn. I got to call Larry Klayman and ask him what he thinks about that. He knows Sullivan quite well. You see that over there on the stilts, Charles?
yep.
I believe that's the New York Standard Hotel.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
And remember, Adam Schiff had some kind of issue going on with the Standard Hotel. This guy looks like a potential problem right here.
Right. The guy sitting down here? I know who you mean.
No, that
I know who you mean.
guy who looked like he just stepped out of a prison yard.
All right. looking for
So
someone.
Emmett Sullivan hires possible criminal defense attorney. Like, what's that about?
Yeah. Well, and then in addition,
Okay, that's right.
in addition, the Ukraine tape that we previewed on Friday, or we showcased on Friday, it's been precious little in the mainstream press so far that I've seen on it. Now it is Memorial Day weekend,
Yeah.
so maybe I'll give them a pass. But the articles that I've seen starting to come out on the internet uniformly say, burnt toast. Biden is burnt toast.
Really?
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do with burnt toast, Charles. You can scrape it off, but all you're left with is
You feed it to, I don't
sort of
know.
a skeleton of bread.
Yeah, you feed it to pigs or something. But no, so on Ukraine, he's in toast. And then that brings us to China, or as Trump would say, China. With China, we have literal riots in the street in Hong Kong, to the great credit of many countries around the world looking at this. Instead of reflexively saying, oh yeah, let's bow to the future world leader, let's accept the surveillance state, let's accept a state that's run by the Communist Party, many people spontaneously come forward and said, no way, we stand with Hong Kong. And this is going to be, I mean, it's terrible for the people of Hong Kong,
Well, who's saying that?
leaders around the world, and also politicians in this country, and also pundits like the great Gordon Chang. Careful there. And so this really is a big issue, what they've done there. I mean, they've actually, I think, taken out a gun, the leadership of the CCP, and shot themselves in the belly. And that doesn't work well. Because,
Sound good.
because we now see what this leadership will do. And anybody who had the theory that they were going to invest money in China to serve the Chinese market has got to understand that if the Chinese government is going to treat Hong Kong Chinese people the way they have been treating them for over a year now, and now even more aggressively badly, how are they going to treat Americans? How are they going to treat French people and German people and others who might invest?
This is like a whole construction site here. What is this, Charles?
I have no clue.
This is like new stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting. I haven't been over here in a while.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. This is a vast city, and it's still not built out. A lot of times, big cities, there you see the Statue of Liberty in the distance, big cities build out their waterfronts first, typically. This waterfront is, right now, I would argue it's derelict.
Well, it's difficult to see the Statue of Liberty. It's like a dot over there.
Yeah, but I'm just telling
What?
people it's there.
Is it derelict?
I mean, there's nothing here. There's nothing paying taxes here except the landowner.
Right.
I mean, and this by any rights, this land should be enormous if built out. If it can be built out, and I don't know that it can.
Why would it not be able to?
It may not have much of a structure underneath to support the weight of a building.
Well, here it says coming soon, 1901, 1947. Let's take a look at this for a second.
Okay.
Coming soon. What does it say there? Something Lloyd?
We'll see in a second. It's Whitney something. Whitney Museum of American Art. In collaboration with the Hudson River Park Trust, a public art project.
Well, the Whitney Museum has they have a museum on the High Line that's actually really nice.
Want to go this way, just?
Sure, I was just checking out the sign.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't really know what that's all about, but people can see the World Trade Center down there. It's a beautiful day, Charles.
It is.
So the leaders around the world are embracing Hong Kong. This is like a pivotal moment in the history of communist China.
Well, and it also puts, I think, our academia and the left, the American left, in a very difficult place. So last Friday we talked about the fact that the Department of Education has uncovered billions of dollars in grants that elite institutions were supposed to report because they came from foreign governments but did not report.
Right.
So, and that's what they found so far. Who knows how many straw donors may have taken government money and used it as a way, saying, you know, I'm a rich billionaire that you've never heard of, and here's 400 million, when it's really just communist Chinese money or some other country's money. So you have the issue of the degree to which thirst in academia and in media to be on the right side of the large future Chinese market has caused people to abandon their principles, abandon core principles that make this country great. The view that we ought to have freedom of religion, that we do have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and other protected rights that you don't have.
Right now.
Well, at least we have them on paper. Right. But in China, you certainly don't have them. I mean, they're aggressively moving there to a system of social credits, to a surveillance state. Nobody.
We have that too.
Nobody, well, here we are. I mean, I don't think you could do in China as a Chinese person what we're doing now.
That's true.
In Shanghai.
I think they've got subtle ways of stopping people from doing it here. It's not as direct. I mean, yeah, they'd come drag me out of the place, but
right.
I think there's other things happening to try to stop us. They're trying to bring these fake lawsuits. They have these hidden secret teams, just like they were doing with Papadopoulos. They can't do it directly, so they get somebody in Australia, somebody in England. They have these ways of getting other people to get involved and do these things kind of secondhand to make it look like they're not doing it.
Right, but I think you'd concede that in China, on the mainland, they're a lot more aggressive against the average Chinese person than people are here.
Yes.
And so this now puts academia, which is under suspicion anyway, and the so-called liberal and progressive wings of the Democratic Party on notice. Do you stand with the people of Hong Kong, yes or no? And this comes at a time when there's another scandal that hasn't gotten the attention it deserves, and that is there are various lawsuits pending brought by classes of highly qualified Asian American applicants who get turned down to the prestigious schools and are arguing that they're being discriminated against on a racial basis. And so, you know, this is treacherous water for the status quo, really in both parties, but especially I think on the left. And how does Joe Biden, coming in for the kill shot here figuratively, how do you say, oh yeah, you can trust me to be your president? So far my son's taken $1 billion out of China that he shouldn't have had. You know, imagine what he's going to get when I'm president.
When he's president,
you
right.
know?
So let me ask you this, Charles. With regard to sending money from foreign governments to universities, what happens? Has the Chinese government given tons of money to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? And if the answer is yes, and then Bill and Melinda Gates give money to Harvard, isn't that a way to hide some foreign government's payment, kind of?
Well, they may well have. I mean, most of the money that has gone to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has come either from Bill and Melinda Gates personally or from Warren Buffett. You know, we're talking in the tens of billions from them. I don't know that they.
He's doing tons of business in China, isn't he?
Microsoft is, but and maybe Bill is as well. Can you see the Statue of Liberty a little better over there now? I think it's fitting that we're having this discussion in view of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, we can see it.
Hi.
I can't shake your hand, but I want you to know I'm a big fan. I watch you every Sunday.
Oh, is that right?
You're in it now.
I never thought that I would see you in person. I'm so thrilled.
Well, nice to meet you.
Yeah, I thought maybe I'll bump into him in McDonald's. Don't you?
That's right. There you go.
I've lived in the village. This is my friend Michelle.
Hi.
I don't think she ever heard of you, but I've been watching you for years.
Oh, well, thank you.
Years and years.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah. Anyway, go to it.
All right.
I've been enjoying walking around Manhattan every Sunday with you
All
in
right.
the last few weeks. Take care.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
see
Keep
you.
up the good work.
We'll
Let's
try.
get some people united.
All right, lock them up. Thank you.
That's good to see,
That's
Charles.
nice.
Sunday with Charles viewers out for a Sunday stroll.
Right. So this is no, low degree of difficulty question for a presidential candidate. You have to make a decision. Do you embrace a global view, globalist view, where because the Chinese population is probably approaching 20% of the world population, and we're a tiny percentage of the world population, do you approach the globalist worldview, do you endorse the globalist worldview where China is the inevitable big dog in politics and economic activity for the next several centuries, and China will be run by a government controlled by a communist party and the People's Liberation Army? Do you subscribe to that view, or do you subscribe to the view we've seen enough, between the Wuhan virus, the repression of racial minorities, particularly Islamic people inside China?
What about the Falun Gong?
And the Falun Gong? We see the approach they took in the early days, not only denying the extent of the spread of the Wuhan virus, but literally killing people who dared to stand up and say, maybe we might have a problem here, Beijing. Those people got iced.
What's the explanation, Charles, for how it didn't spread very much elsewhere in China? Like, it didn't go to Beijing, it didn't leave too much. We have way more reported cases. Well, I mean, obviously the numbers are in question, but it doesn't seem to have organically spread through China that much. And now the news this week has been, Sweden's, what's the term? Herd immunity plan, that's now not working, and they have thousands of cases. I sort of anticipated that they might try to convince people of that, but I was speaking with Michael Oden, who is a Swedish guy who's been on the show with Ole quite a bit. We've got Ole Damegard's Light on Conspiracies tomorrow for sponsors, of course. He's saying that he has no way to verify those official numbers, and that, just like us, they're hearing that on the news, but we don't know if there are thousands of people dying in Sweden or not.
Yeah, so the issue of dying and cases needs to be teased out a little bit. The suspicion that I have long had is that a lot more people have the virus than we assume.
But they're not getting sick.
But they're not getting sick, exactly.
Self-resolving may cause that.
Right, so the issue is we're focusing on deaths, and obviously we're approaching 100,000 deaths in theory. Now, we haven't been able to go back over those deaths to decide how many of them were exclusively due to COVID and how many of them are as a result of comorbidities or even
influenza, even, which they stopped reporting.
Right, exactly. And I'm mindful of one case I know of where somebody was in a hospice. Somebody was in a hospice, and
this cop is very good, busily making sure everybody's safe. Texting.
Somebody was in a hospice, which means a determination had been reached that person wasn't going to live. And in the hospice, that person contracted COVID and then died.
What?
And so
that's crazy.
And that's counted as a COVID death. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
I guess this is like the workout section of the thing.
Yeah,
it's a lot of stuff over here that I haven't really seen before.
Yeah, and this is for the visitors and residents of the city. This is free. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
So, as I say, I think these presidential candidates have to. The rubber has met the road here on the issue of Hong Kong. You either stand with the Hong Kong people or you don't. But beyond that, even if the Chinese were to retract and say, oh, whoops, we made a mistake. Oh, we forgot about that treaty from 1997. My bad. We'll go back to where we were before. Can't do that. The toothpaste is out of the tube on this. If you're somebody who was about to sink $1 billion into a long-term project in China, watching this, you're a fool to put your real money in China. Because if they can change a core element of a treaty like this, snapping a finger, what do you think they're going to do about an investment project? So I think capital is going to rush, to the extent it can, it's going to start rushing out of China. It's certainly not going to go into China.
Let me ask you a question, Charles. If you were working in your job at Dillon Read and you were supposed to be busily paying attention to some kind of fancy financial stuff that you were doing over there at Dillon Read, but instead you were just on the phone, texting, calling, not doing your job, Would that be an effective way to be a financial analyst, or would that be standing around in the park texting people? Because both of these cops don't look too engaged in
Right,
protecting, serving, or doing anything other than texting.
Right. Well, actually, when I left Illinois in 1991, there were no internets. There were very few cell phones. Let's not necessarily provoke these people.
Not at all. Not going to do that, because then we will see them do their job, which is beating people up.
But if we can, I don't know if you can pan that way. I mean, look at these new buildings
Yeah.
up and down the west side of New York, and then across the street in New Jersey. There's so much new capacity, residential, commercial, and who's going to want to stay stuck in this sinkhole to pay all the taxes that are going to have to be collected to cover this emergency, to cover the consequences of the emergency, and to cover the reality that many individuals and businesses are going to say, F this, we're out of here. We're going to Texas, we're going to Nevada, we're going to states that are business friendly. You know, we
Del
don't
Big Tree moved to Texas,
Yeah.
out of California.
I think-
Also, Elon Musk said he's going to move Tesla out of California into Texas. I think Texas is going to experience an economic boom.
I think so too. Now,
Maybe they should secede.
yeah, or maybe they should merge with Mexico.
Texaco. That's already taken. These cops are doing nothing but looking at the phone.
Well, you know, phones need to be checked too, Jason. Right?
I guess. So, Charles, the thing I was trying to get at with Alan Dershowitz was very relevant to what you're talking about, because I think that they were doing a scheme to transfer United States technology. They wanted to do certain things in China, certain things in the United States. They wanted to get around regulations. And it's interesting how much fervor has erupted over the statements of Alan Dershowitz that are his statements of opinion that really aren't relevant to anything.
Right.
And his statements, this is what I wanted to ask you about. So this letter that Alan Dershowitz signed in 2007 when he was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, that says that Jeffrey Epstein was one of the people who created the Clinton Global Initiative. Can you go into some more depth on that letter
Sure,
and what the
sure.
implications of new statements made by Dershowitz might be?
So unless it were just a totally rigged deal, right, where the whole Epstein prosecution and defense was a sideshow meant to distract focus from Hillary and Bill Clinton's close, long-standing ties to Epstein, right? Unless it was that,
Unless.
which I can't imagine it would be something like that. Can you, Jason?
I'm imagining it.
Do we want to go that way too, or do we want
Nah, I mean, this is kind of, well, sure, why not?
to? Okay. So,
Unless it's a sideshow to distract.
right. My understanding of the process is I think that was a letter that was sent in to address what kind of sentence Epstein should get.
Right.
I think he had been either agreed to plead guilty or, and I forget what.
Solicitation of prostitution.
Right. So this was a letter seeking, you know, not clemency, but leniency.
Leniency, right.
Leniency. And ordinarily, you know, my understanding is that in any proceeding before a court, a lawyer is an officer of the court. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but
I understand that as well.
so that would tend to mean that you shouldn't lie
Certainly not.
in a letter seeking anything that's addressed to a judge. And to say that, you know, well, I don't know what was in the letter, it was a long letter, it's a long time ago, that's not much of a defense. Now, a central argument.
To be fair, it was just an interview, not a court proceeding, but I hear what you're saying.
Well, right, but my point, I mean, if it were a court proceeding, you'd be going down the, may I refresh your recollection, Counselor Dershowitz, kind of discussion. But in 2007, when I think that letter was sent, there was no such thing as the Clinton Global Initiative. No legal entity had been created called the Clinton Global Initiative. Yet, 3 meetings had been held in New York City for the Clinton Global Initiative, and they had begun a process of creating a fake university called the Clinton Global Initiative University. And one or more meetings by 2007 had been held for that. So, if Epstein indeed were involved promoting the activities of a fake charity operating inside New York State where it was not registered, where it was not authorized, where it had not sought tax exemption, but where it had solicited a lot of money that supposedly instigated tens of billions of dollars of commitments for other charitable activities, again, from a New York base, without registering and complying with New York laws, that would seem to be an argument to spend more time in prison, not less. And further,
wouldn't Dershowitz be implicated in that if he signed the letter?
I would have thought, I would have thought there comes a moment in time, I know lawyers never discipline themselves, but there comes a moment in time where a lawyer who is willing not to do, let's say he didn't do his homework, let's say he relied on somebody.
Who's the other guy who signed it?
Left court. Jay Left Court. Let's say he relied on Left Court or somebody else to do the diligence, and he has something inside the memo from somebody saying,
Let's go this way, it's getting windy.
Okay, that we've checked everything, and the facts are that in 2007, the main Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Foundation itself, which Jeffrey Epstein had been involved with since about 2002, that main Clinton Foundation, its largest piece was the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, which originally was called the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc., and has been variously called all sorts of names. That thing was almost, let's call it 90% the action of the whole enterprise, and that there's no authorization for that entity to do any work anywhere outside Little Rock of any kind. And yet Epstein had lent his Lolita Express in 2002 to Clinton and Magaziner and others to go over to Africa and other places. So the letter omits material facts concerning the long-term relationship of Epstein to the Clintons and their involvement in various Clinton charities that had never been audited lawfully. To this date, they've never been audited lawfully.
And didn't Dershowitz reveal certain things about the relationship between the Clintons and Epstein? Was any of that stuff that he said news to you?
Well, the news that he had been introduced to Epstein via Lynn Forster. Yeah, Lynn Forster Rothschild. That to me is new.
Hang on a second. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was news to you, that he had been introduced by Lynn Forster to Rothschild?
Yeah, and she married a Rothschild, and I've heard it through somebody who's very reliable that the Rothschild family is not pleased with Lynn Forster in her wacky crane. Well, because she's engaged in charity fraud. And,
sorry.
And the Rothschilds have a substantial amount of money, and they're a deep pocket in any potential lawsuit. So,
right.
So yeah, that letter from Alan Dershowitz, frankly, was a disgrace in Left Court. And you can't say, it wasn't like it was a marketing exercise. It was a proceeding trying to decide whether, now we know, a very dangerous sex predator should get less time out on the streets or more. And
wasn't that a letter that would have involved Alexander Acosta, who later in the interview...
It did involve him. Yeah.
Right. So Dershowitz says in that same interview that Alexander Acosta was lying when he said that he was told to lay off of Epstein because Epstein was intelligence. He also said that he had never heard that Epstein was involved with intelligence. No, sorry. He said that he had never heard the allegation that Epstein was involved in sexual blackmail, and that the notion that Epstein was an intelligence operative was absurd, according to him.
Right. Well,
what'd you think of that?
I think, as a guess, I think Epstein was definitely, at best case, being used, was allowed to do what he did because various intelligence agencies thought that they would get information out of it and be useful to corrupting politicians who are not so easily corrupted around the world. That's the best case. The worst case is that they actually are running those things.
Well, but what about directly accusing Acosta of lying?
Isn't that like hearsay stuff? Acosta's not there to defend himself.
Well,
so
it's not hearsay. It is hearsay in that he's not under oath and he's not in court when he says it.
God.
But it's his statement that he's now made, and he's accused Acosta of lying. I would be very interested to hear what Alexander Acosta has to say about it, because right after he said it, he left his job, which would seem to indicate that perhaps it was true and somebody didn't like the fact that he said it.
Well, yeah, I think this whole area, I mean, I believe there's an investigation into Epstein, isn't there, at this point? So, I mean, the number of people who come up on the Ortel's First Law Google searching, where you put in somebody's name with fraud and Clinton, the number of questionable people like Epstein and Weinstein and Justra and the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, you go on and on and on, Gates, on and on and on, of people who seem to have charitably lost leave of their senses and, more pointedly, got themselves involved, willingly or not, in gross, illegal, life-changing activities that have marred many young women and maybe men around the world. And that they would be involved in those activities, to me, makes them unfit to hold any position of trust, and indeed should send them straight on the path to jail.
Well, you mentioned two important people, Epstein and Weinstein, and I pose this question to you, Charles. Do you think it's possible, with regard to some of these civil lawsuits related to the Jeffrey Epstein case? I'm talking about Giuffre v. Dershowitz, Giuffre v. Maxwell. Is it possible that Alan Dershowitz and David Boies are actually working together behind the scenes and that they publicly present themselves as enemies in the way that the 13 feet of collective brotherly social engineering does, so that people think they're enemies and they can play both sides of a civil lawsuit and perhaps use the outcome from that civil lawsuit to impact aspects of a criminal lawsuit, like corrupting evidence, revealing evidence, getting evidence eliminated?
It's possible, but I would, if we had a judicial system, which evidently we don't seem to have at present, that took the laws and regulations seriously, if they were indeed doing that, engaging basically in frivolous lawsuits, tying up, failing to zealously protect the interests of their clients, then I would hope they'd be kicked out of the profession and sanctioned. But
well, that's a big if. You've predicated that on us having a functional judicial system.
Right.
But you might, for these frivolous lawsuits, you might even colloquially refer to them as fake lawsuits.
Right. Yeah.
Because it seems to me there's a lot of people pulling shenanigans with lawsuits, and after that interview with Dershowitz the other day, the things that he revealed about Epstein, Clinton, Bill Gates, Rothschilds, Harvard, Lieber, Wyss Institute, those are the questions I wanted to ask him about, because I think that those things are all potentially involved with this COVID-19 outbreak. And it seems that actually multiple someones, are very dedicated to directing people's attention to other aspects of the interview that I believe are less important. And they're trying to distract off of that topic.
Yeah. It was a great interview you did.
Thank you. I mean, I'm more interested in the information from it being followed up on by people who can follow up on it. I mean, I've done several videos about how Dershowitz's legal opinion, which is actually, the only valid opinion that he could offer that anybody should care about, was totally wrong. And he refused to speak to me about that because I think he's afraid of being embarrassed by a non-lawyer.
Yeah, as I understand the argument that he was trying to make, he was saying the state has an absolute right to compel anyone inside the borders from being vaccinated, full stop.
To compel them to be vaccinated.
Right, to be vaccinated, and leaving out the part of it being a proven vaccine.
Well, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. What the police powers thing in the Constitution says is that they do have the absolute right to make a decision for the greater good, the
Right.
betterment of the public safety, etc. And if that means that, in the case of smallpox, they decided this thing is killing so many people that we have to vaccinate everyone.
Right.
And the thing is, that lawsuit, that Supreme Court decision that he was referencing was talking about a vaccine that had been in use for 109 years. The smallpox vaccine was developed in 1796, and there was 109 years of collective medical knowledge, debate, information about the safety, the efficacy, etc. So, I mean, if after 109 years of administering a vaccine, even if they determine that 20% of the people who got the vaccine died on the spot, if smallpox was killing 80% of the population and this was going to reduce it to 20% of the population,
Yeah.
the state has the authority to vote and say, okay, we're going to do this. The
Right.
key difference here is that they're talking about a new technology of vaccine, a messenger RNA technology that doesn't introduce a pathogen to sort of train your immune system. This is now manipulating us on a DNA, a genetic level, injecting
Right.
this messenger RNA into your cells to get your cells to produce some new kind of cell that's not actually even COVID-19. It's some Frankenstein genetic thing that they're inventing, and it's never been tested. No mRNA vaccine has ever been used ever before this, and Dershowitz is saying they have the right to compel you to do that. Well, there's an important part of the police powers language in the Constitution that says that it cannot be applied arbitrarily or oppressively. And if they don't know what this is going to do, putting it in you is arbitrary.
And oppressive.
And so he loses.
Yeah.
And Dersh is afraid to talk to me about that now because he's going to be made to look like a fool by a 3D cameraman who's not even a lawyer. And not even in 3D anymore.
Yeah, well, good work on that.
And they're trying to distract from this because it decimates this whole argument that they're all trying to push forward, which is mandatory vaccination. And they're trying to point to their, whether it's at the top level. I say Dersh is a social engineer too. He's
On this
going on
topic,
Fox to share to share this information with everybody. Charles, that's the air system for the Holland Tunnel.
Is it really?
I think so. I mean, it looks just like the one for the Lincoln Tunnel, and the Holland Tunnel is right over here, isn't it?
It's near here, I guess.
Yeah, that puts air into the Holland Tunnel.
And air.
And this is the back of the Chelsea Piers.
Yep.
So I'm going to stay on this with Dershowitz because he's trying to push this. He wants to be the guy, just like at the impeachment, he was up there talking to the Senate. He wants to be talking to the Supreme Court about how they should use this Jacobson v. Massachusetts as the case law to allow them to forcibly inject everybody. And if he goes there, I'll be there to tell him I'll be polite, but I'll be there to tell him that he's wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think this rush to embrace a vaccine was a very big mistake on Trump's part, actually.
Yes.
And I noticed that Ann Coulter has gone, full anti-Trump this morning in a tweet storm.
Huh.
And I hope that we go back over this ground and really go back to the period, right the way back to when the first sign of the Wuhan virus may have occurred. And rather than doing contact tracing, let's just go back over the deaths. Let's be scientific about who died for what reason. Let's be honest about that work. And then let's think through just how susceptible people are to mass hysteria. I mean, I think the present lockdown and this almost nearly, I guess it's 2.5 month period where we've been destroying businesses, destroying people in school,
damage.
was done way too cavalierly by the many people who use this whip of saying, unless you obey, you're going to destroy a country. So you've got to shut up and obey.
Absculta. That's what it says outside the BBC.
Really?
Listen and obey. There's
Yeah.
another hugely important aspect of David Hawkins' research that I wanted to mention to you that he's just brought out in his post today. People can watch David Hawkins' Discovery CSI every Friday on Patreon and Subscribestar. But David has pointed out this whole Cecil Rhodes Manifesto, which is a 200-year manifesto that is going to use, people need to look at it on David's Patreon, but it's saying that they're going to use corporate, I forget the term that they use, corporatism to take over.
Right.
And that it's a 200-year plan. And they used the World War II British double-cross system, which there's a book written about this, Charles. Maybe you've read it. It's about how this guy Masterman, who was a British intelligence officer, turned the German officers to be double agents working for the British.
Right.
And that at a certain point during this program, he realized that it had become a triple cross where some of the Nazi agents had turned back. They were
Right.
pretending to be working for the British, and we're now, infiltrating the British. And the Cecil Rhodes thing was talking about dedicating a huge amount of money to creating the Rhodes Scholarship to attract American and
Commonwealth
colonial
kids, yeah.
dominion, so
Right.
Canada,
Australia, New Zealand.
all these places, and to bring them into the Double Cross program. And this is all tied directly to when Bill Clinton was in Oxford and
Right.
all these Rhodes Scholars. James Woolsey, the CIA director, who was the CIA director under Clinton, also Oxford, also Rhodes Scholar.
Was he a Rhodes
Part
Scholar?
of this Double Cross thing.
Yeah.
So this all is coming together, and it's interesting for me to observe who these dopey social engineers, which guests on Crowdsource the Truth they're trying to smear based on what we're talking about and where they're trying to redirect people's attention.
Right. Well, so there is, I think, in all this some good news, and that is Donald Trump gave an interview on Cheryl Atkinson's Full Measure show that I watched some of. I think there's either technical difficulties involving me only or technical difficulties involving the production of that show. Do you want to walk in so it's windy? Less windy? Or do
What's that?
you want to walk in so
I
it's
think
less?
it's kind of nice here. No?
All right. It's fine by me. And in that interview, Trump categorically states that his intent is to beat the vicious deep state and drain the swamp. He hasn't backed off of that. Giuliani, going back to the Papadopoulos tape, certainly acts as if he knows exactly what's going on, and to a certain extent he does. I mean, he's the one who began the project going to Ukraine, I forget when. He's the one who said he had seen evidence of horrible crimes. He's the one who took the heat from Lindsey Graham and other senators saying, well, if you've seen this evidence, show it to us. And so he did.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, no, we don't like that evidence.
Yeah. So, and we now know at least two U.S. attorneys, Durham and the guy from Missouri, are both on this case as a guest. There are others because it's such a vast case.
Right.
And we also know, as we've been talking about for a while, that there's no way Trump gets across the line, if he wants to get across the line and get reelected, concluding in September like Comey, or July like Comey in 2016, well, they did this and that, the other thing bad, but no competent prosecutor would ever, he doesn't have that opportunity. So it's a binary issue for him. Anybody with an IQ of 10 or higher, 100 being average intelligence.
So nobody working for the FBI, you mean?
And nobody working in mainstream media. Any sentient human being who can watch 1, 3, 5 of our broadcasts and check for yourselves whether what we're saying is bunk or true,
Right.
will know that there's a massive set, the largest set of unprosecuted charity fraud and corruption crimes ever attempted. And it's not simply a U.S. matter. There's a base in New York, there's a base in the UK, the big donor countries in France, Italy, Norway, Sweden, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. There are tons and tons, Sweden, there are tons of these leaders and former leaders who have grown accustomed to their high-level lifestyles while leading the country, who realize they need a way to pay for that once they leave, and they're not going to get a pension big enough. So what better way to do it than a presidential foundation? And we learned that Biden has a foundation he shut down. We learned, of course.
Why is he shutting it down? Stealing money?
Well, they wouldn't make disclosures a la Clinton about where they got, what government grants they got. So they thought they'd just shut it down without amending the
But that's got to be kind of a good thing for what we're trying to do, isn't it, Charles?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Trudeau has a big foundation. His father set it up. It's bigger than the Clinton Foundation. All of these people who want to get around any kind of globalist cause see how it works. You get up there, you get Greta Thunberg, who's 1/2 of a full deck, if that, of cards. She gets up, rants and raves and screams at people, and all of a sudden, potential Nobel Prize winner. Let's get her. Yeah, they're trying to put her up on a pedestal, along with AOC and others like them, who just start screaming that there's a problem. There's a problem. We can't show you any evidence of the problem, but we're going to say that there's a gigantic global problem. Next thing you know, trillions of dollars go your way, or billions of dollars go your way.
Pretty standard, approach.
Yeah, well, we're out of money. We're out. We have too much debt on the global economy, certainly too much debt on the U.S. economy, and major European economies, Japanese economy. We just can't keep doing this.
Yeah. Well, they're worse than out of money. I mean, they've got this now 2.2 trillion. Didn't they say they have a new 3 trillion that they're contemplating?
Indeed.
I forget who I was having this conversation with, but it was about someone with a small business who now was saying that they were trying to reopen it, but the people that were working for them said they'd rather just stay home and get $1,200 from the government.
Right.
Because that's easier, and they're getting more money than they were getting at their job.
And you're not doing any work. Right.
Yeah, but the problem with that is if you're at a low-level job like that, the way the world is supposed to work is that the diligent among us move up through an organization like that and eventually become in charge of it,
right,
and move on to start their own or a new version or go work somewhere else, and you move up through the ladder, and this sort of collectively advances the economy, society, etc.
Yeah.
But we've now cut that off at the knees.
Why do that when you could just get money, just steal money? So I think we're clearly past a tipping point here. The Congress, of course, refused to stay focused and engaged on how to move forward. Nancy Pelosi.
Hey, they have the dog run open here. Or is that a dog run? It is. Sorry, Nancy Pelosi, Charles. People hate it when I interrupt you with non sequitur things, but part of the point of walking around outside is that we're partly dedicated to the presentation and partly dedicated to what's going on in New York. So Nancy Pelosi's
$3 trillion bill is just chock filled with garbage. Stuff that's never going to get across the line, doesn't make any sense. Mail-in voting.
They're voting on it right now. Can you hear the barking?
Yeah, I can. And you're not saying that Nancy Pelosi is a dog, are you?
I was just saying Congress.
Because that would be politically incorrect.
Sorry.
But true.
She's an ice cream lover. So do we think there's any connection between Mini Mike eating the gay ice cream and Nancy Pelosi having the $20 ice cream? Like, why are they all so prominently featured with weird ice cream?
I don't know. I'm not an ice cream lover myself.
I do like ice cream.
Oh boy.
Now what's this?
Some kind of a concert, or?
How could they have that? They're supposed to be not gathering. I mean, this is
just music.
Strange, because the police are basically just deciding who they want to beat up and where. There's nobody here doing anything substantially different than the guy who got his head smashed into the sidewalk. I don't want people to have to socially distance. I'm just observing when it's not happening and when the police get involved.
They're certainly not social distancing down here.
Good.
I don't think I finished the thought about the prevalence of COVID cases and the morbidities.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing so far is, at this stage, some studies, but many anecdotal reports that many people got the virus, had no malign impact, may have had a couple rough days or whatever, and are fine.
And you count yourself among those?
I do. I mean, I'm no medical expert. I suspect that that may have happened to me. But so we are learning, sadly, that suicides are mounting. And I think as the full impact of this crisis, I mean, you sit there and you're a $250,000 student loan borrower with a not even a cum laude degree in gender studies. You got no prospects for employment in this economy right now. And how are you going to pay off this debt, which is not dischargeable in bankruptcy? Student loan debt is not dischargeable in bankruptcy.
Why do they allow that?
Well, the reason for it is that by making it non-dischargeable in bankruptcy, the lender is more reassured about making the loan, and hence the lender is more willing to make the loans. It was a very bad idea.
Right. Sounds like the subprime mortgage thing.
It's exact subprime education.
Right. You know, there's a family who lives down the hall from me who their son is actually one of the few people who I've known since he was born. When I moved in, he was a tiny, like peanut-sized baby, and met his mom and dad. Right. Well, but now he's in college. He goes to Yale, Charles.
I've heard of that place.
I know. And I ran into him in the hallway the other day, and I was asking him what's going on with college, and he said that it's still happening, but they haven't described how, like if he'll go there or have it on video. So they're like, oh, don't worry, just send the money.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll sort it out later.
Yeah, it's just so irresponsible. Really is.
We're actually, Charles, approaching the spot where we did our very first
I
interview.
know.
We should go over there, I think.
I think that's a good idea. We
There's
might even.
kind of a growing collection of like lost tapes. There's a couple of things that we've shot that haven't made it to air.
Like
Some-
Jackie Chan outtakes?
Kind of like that. There was an incident in Grand Central. I don't know if people want to see that. I've been thinking about making some like, lost footage type special edition release, maybe for sponsors only. If people are interested in that, they can email me, or if you're not a sponsor and you're interested in that, you become a sponsor on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. It's nothing earth-shaking necessarily, but interesting things that people might want to see. And, it's interesting, Charles, there have been some technical disruptions that have thrown off Patreon the past 2 weeks in a row. And,
Really? Are you back on now?
no, I'm not able to post sponsor-exclusive stuff right now. I'm communicating with the various service providers that are involved in that, but it's just a remarkable coincidence how it keeps happening. Again, I have no direct evidence that it's deliberate disruption, but it sure is coincidental.
It sure is.
Should we go this way?
Yeah, let's go that way.
What is this building here, Charles?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either, but this has been here for a while.
Kind of pretty.
It looks sort of...
It would be very rough to live
Financial.
here in the winter. I bet you it is so cold down here.
Well, you're also really removed from mass transit stuff and taxi accessibility.
Maybe you should move here.
Why?
Well, because you spend a lot of time in your room.
It's true, under lockdown. I mean, what we're going to see over here that's most interesting to me is the boat, what do you call this thing?
Marina.
Yeah, the marina. So it's got to cost a ton of money to keep a boat down here,
Oh,
but there
yeah.
are some fancy, fancy boats.
Yeah, thank goodness I've never had any interest in owning a boat.
Oh. I mean, they're fun. I like boats.
They're fun when everything's working perfectly and you don't have to clean up.
What's with that guy? That's like so close to me. How about social distancing on the bike, whether there's a virus or not? You drive that close to somebody. If I had taken a step to the right, that guy would have crashed right into me.
Yep, I don't think he's necessarily in the Phi Beta Kappa group.
It's interesting that you mentioned Phi Beta Kappa because David Hawkins ties them. Bill Clinton is Phi Beta Kappa.
Was he?
Yeah, and then I think Susan Rice is also.
Really?
I think so. We should look that up. Let's see.
Probably changed the standards.
Well, and then there's Kappa Beta Phi, which is kind of the flip side of Phi Beta Kappa. That's a Wall Street secret society that
Right.
Treasury Secretary or Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross is part of, and
Yeah,
they
lots of
engage in
people
some
are.
pretty unusual stuff.
Oh, that bird didn't social distance either.
I'm trying to see if we're still live here. I hope we are.
This is where we were, I think. Here.
Looks like we are. No, we were further around to the left by the World Financial Center. I remember quite clearly because it was a location I selected for a film I did at NYU, and I wanted to get back to that spot because it was a cool spot. Oh, wow, Charles. We've got 1,800 people watching us on YouTube right now.
Oh, that's great. Thank you all. And please, since you mentioned it, I hope people who are watching now will watch the previous episode, special report,
Yeah.
and take the time to watch that Ukrainian video press
Yeah.
conference, because to me, I think it's highly credible. We haven't mentioned that in that video there was a Ukrainian member of parliament and the prosecutor on this corruption case that supposedly names Biden, as well as the former president Poroshenko of Ukraine. But overnight, another Ukrainian MP was found shot in the head. So it would seem like the tension is rising in and over Ukraine. And honestly really need to get to the bottom of what in the hell the Clinton Foundation was doing in the Ukraine starting in 2004. Now, when they first were there in 2004, the lead outside director, in my view, of the Clinton Foundation was Terry McAuliffe, who at that time in 2004 was chairman of the Democratic National Committee.
Then became
Governor of Virginia. But what do you think that the chairman of the Democratic National Committee might have needed in 2004?
Money.
Money. Exactly. So why do you think, is it reasonable for somebody like Terry McAuliffe, who's a business dude, to accept the continued use of a schlock accounting firm, BKD, that can't even, I question whether the lead people at BKD have even read applicable accounting guidelines in connection with the Clinton Foundation audits that they did. But, you know.
Holy cow, look at that. Have you ever seen jet skis in the Hudson River before? Really? Okay. I haven't seen that. Sorry, so you were saying something very important, and people will now accuse me of being a dog chasing squirrels.
That's all right. So back in 2004, when the Clinton Foundation began to go more far-flung around the world for chasing HIV and AIDS projects and taking money from governments and other people, Terry McAuliffe should have known that that was not allowed. I mean, he can't say, I suppose he could say, I'm an idiot, I didn't understand it, but he tries to pretend that he's pretty serious. And he's been in business, he's been in a lot of business scams. So he should have, yeah, absolutely.
He's a well-seasoned scammer.
He's a scam artist, extraordinary. He was governor of Virginia from, I forget when it was exactly, 2006.
What is he now?
He's back in private life, probably trying to orchestrate. I'm surprised actually he didn't surface as a potential candidate for president of the United States this cycle.
I think there's something wrong with his candidacy. Let me read something to you, Charles, that I think is going to make you very interested in speaking with David Hawkins.
Sure.
Susan Elizabeth Rice, born November 17th, 1964, is an American ... I'm not reading the full thing, but I'm just looking at the first search result that came up. She was elected Phi Beta Kappa her junior year.
Wow, that's very impressive.
Educated
actually
at Stanford, New College, Oxford.
I know, she's a Rhodes Scholar.
So she's a Rhodes Scholar, she's Phi Beta Kappa. She's part of this double cross program, and that is what Cecil Rhodes intended to use in his 200-year manifesto to take over the world through this corporate, I forget the term, but it's on David Hawkins' Patreon. We're too windy over here.
Yeah, let's go in to the left.
And also, we missed our spot where all the boats are. I think we
You
go
want to
this way,
circle
we can
back
get there. I think we can go that way.
Okay.
But I mean, what's going on there with Oxford, Phi Beta Kappa, Rhodes Scholars? All these guys are trying to destroy the country, and they're kind of doing it right now.
Well, so Phi Beta Kappa is an honor society. To get it in your junior year means you really had to punch the lights out, get great grades in freshman and sophomore years, which is very tough to do. But most people, you know, are not really ready for the higher rigor that comes at the top colleges in your freshman year. They try to get you to really outdo yourself. So hats off to her going to Stanford and getting Phi Beta Kappa if that's true. I think there's been a long-term plan in many countries, not just Rhodes, to have the countries in the world run by technocrats in an unregulated system where the big money that wants to fraud and corrupt away can never be brought to justice. I mean, you look into Cecil Rhodes' career, he was no Boy Scout. I mean,
he liked Boy Scouts.
He liked Boy Scouts, and he was not a Boy Scout. So,
there's even something called, in this Cecil Rhodes manifesto, something called tail mail. Tailmale. What the hell is that?
I hope it's not what it seems it could be.
I don't think it's true, no.
Did we walk past the marina?
No, I think it's further down. It's right there.
Okay.
We haven't got to the World Trade Center yet, have we? Oops.
Oh yeah, I think that's it right there.
Yeah.
I see the spire. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, so I think that there have been numerous people. The Germans thought they could dominate the world. The Japanese thought they could dominate the world. The English did dominate the world for a long period of time. After World War II in particular, there are groups in America thought they'd dominate the world, thinking here of the Rockefellers. Monopolists of all stripes love to dominate global things. So we're locked here in a big battle between those who embrace unregulated globalism and those who believe that we're not yet ready in a place where any global governance structure is going to make sense, and instead national structures should be encouraged and run optimally, which ours is not yet, because we have economically illiterate, corrupt people in both parties in Congress. Our government's way too big. Our people have become way too satisfied with surface level answers and non-answers.
I think this leads around to it.
Yeah. And this is a wave election in 2020.
What do you mean?
People have to get out and vote, have to understand the consequences. If Donald Trump is not reelected, or worse, if he's reelected and loses both houses, we could end up
4 more years of virus.
well, or worse. And the good news is, I think, that the markets, financial markets, if they remain open, which I hope they do, will begin to sense this well before the election. This is not going to be
Sense what?
whether Trump's going to win and by what margin. The people who were staying at home in 2018, buying the bullshit out of Joe Scarborough and others,
Oh yeah.
we should talk about
Yeah.
that. And allowed the speakership to pass to this plasticized buffoon, Nancy Pelosi. Those people had better see the errors of their ways. Because if they care about their children and grandchildren, if they care about their wealth and their income prospects, they better not let the unthinkable happen in November.
This is new since 9/11, Charles. I've never been in this.
Yeah, I haven't either. But this is where we were. This is Brookfield Place.
Yeah, around this way.
Yeah. I'm on the right, sorry.
Yeah,
So it's a wave election. We're seeing some good signs so far. We have the California race, Katie Hill seat that was won by a Republican. We have the Wisconsin seat won by a Republican. We have 3 state level races won by Republicans. And we're seeing the turnout to be very, very high this time. And the interest very, very high. I also think one thing favoring removal of many incumbents is the fact that people have had a long period of time now to think for themselves. They've been forced to think for themselves. They can't watch sports. They can't watch new movies because there aren't any.
Let's see if we can zoom in on the Statue of Liberty here.
There you go. Maybe do it a little past these two guys.
There we go. Yeah, Cuomo announced that sports could reopen. He was telling everybody what they could do with their businesses. It's
Right.
really bad.
Because he knows everything. I mean, he obviously knows
More
everything.
like he knows nothing, but okay.
Well, in Cuomo's case, he's been involved, he and his sister, with a charity, a dirty charity, that has been taking government grants, filing BKD-style accounting statements. We're going to be profiling that once we get past, do a bit more work here. Back on Scarborough, noteworthy that Donald Trump himself has taken to bringing up this case of the dead intern or the dead worker.
But isn't it ridiculous, Charles, that he's just tweeting about it? Why doesn't he just have them impanel a grand jury and investigate the guy?
I don't know how it works, Jason. I don't know who has the right to do that.
He's the president.
I mean, we don't know that it's murder yet, right?
Yeah,
So
but
you'd have
he's
to have
saying that
credible.
there's all this evidence.
You'd have to have credible allegations that it's a murder, and then there's no statute of limitations, and I suppose you could open a case. But noteworthy that Trump
But impaneling a grand jury is not the same as opening a case, and the threshold is way lower. You just need plausible evidence to ask the grand jury if they think there should be.
But you have to have a crime, right?
The woman's dead.
But that could be natural causes.
Under the desk and blow to the head. I mean, that sounds like.
I
Wait a
have
minute, where are the boats? Charles, I've never seen this thing empty before.
Yeah. Well,
Holy cow.
there's 1, 2.
But Charles, it's usually every single one filled.
Yeah.
Wow. What do you think of that?
Not good for the marina revenues.
Huh. I mean, this is the first time we've been to this side. It's somebody's 62nd birthday, or maybe 26th. Can you see that?
Yeah, I do. It's not 33.
Right. Well, this is the first time I've been down here since the coronavirus incident has begun, but this is the spot right over there where we did the first interview.
Right.
That's the Winter Garden there. This is the World Financial Center. This thing was hit by debris on 9/11, and we can see the new World Trade Center back there. So what do you think about Trump tweeting about Scarborough? I was kind of annoyed by it. I just want him to do something and not just tweet about stuff.
Yeah, I hope he is doing stuff. For the life of me, I don't understand what's taking so long. But maybe the pace of doing anything in government is so much slower than we're used to in the private sector, and you can only push as much as you can push. But I think we've been at this now. This is our 220 odd shows, 225 or more.
230.
Yeah. There's a lot of evidence that we've put forth. Nobody has come out and said you're wrong for this reason. We've gotten no letters from people saying we're wrong. Indeed, the more we pull on strings, the bigger the scandal seems to become, embracing many, many countries around the world. And now we see Bill Gates ever more surfaced as the global health expert or the guy who should be telling us what to do next. And I think the reverse is the case. I mean, from what I understand of allegations concerning his charity's operation in India and distributing a polio vaccine,
Yeah.
for that alone, it should be shut down.
Well, he should be investigated too.
Right.
Now, Charles, there was an interesting video that was brought to my attention just yesterday, which is from, I think, 2005 and had initially surfaced on the internet in 2011, which features a guy giving a presentation showing fMRI scans of the brain, saying this is the brain of a radical fundamentalist and this is the brain of a regular person, and talking about using a virus to actually vaccinate against this mental condition of radical
Insanity.
fanaticism.
Yeah.
Well, he's presenting it at the Department of Defense, some building in the Pentagon, and they say it's a presentation being given by Bill Gates to the CIA. It's quite obviously not Bill Gates.
Right.
But it does seem to be a legitimate presentation, and the guy giving it seems to know a lot about medical stuff and these scans and whatever, and this plan. It seems to be serious. It's not like a hoax video put together by Russian comedians calling Adam Schiff or any of the other ridiculous hoaxes we've seen. It seems real, and what occurs to me is someone might have just slapped this text overlay saying, oh, this is Bill Gates speaking to the, actually let's go, how do we get out of here now that we're in here?
That way?
Okay, yeah. So it seems to me, Charles, someone took a legitimate presentation with someone who's a contractor to the Department of Defense talking about using a virus to try to attack an enemy, and then what they did is they just said, oh, this is Bill Gates, so that now Snopes and other people can say, no, that video is a hoax.
Right.
The hoax part is that it's Bill Gates. The real part is that they have plans out there to use viruses to attack enemies.
Yeah, I'm so much against that. I mean,
Oh, sorry, one more thing. He says, the guy asks, how are you going to disperse this? And he said, we can aerosolize it and disperse it through things like influenza and
good.
SARS and MERS.
oh, great.
So he's describing them doing exactly what's happening right now. And it just seems so clear to me that this is a biological attack. What is this?
New York City Police Memorial.
Oh my God.
Oh, these are people probably died in 9/11 or police officers.
That's way more than what died on 9/11. Where's the memorial to the people that the police are stepping on their heads? Where's your parents? There we go.
Look those there.
I feel sad for little kids right now, Charles,
Why is that, Jason?
because they're growing up in a bizarre and twisted world where they have to wear masks and can't go to school and do
Right.
regular little kid stuff. There's his dad right there.
Right. Shall we continue that way, or
Whichever way you want to go.
we're just
We're doing okay on battery.
all right?
49%.
Okay. Legs are doing okay. Looks like the sailboat's leaving.
So that was interesting info on Susan Rice. What else would you like to discuss, Charles?
Well, I think in the coming week now, we have tomorrow's Memorial Day, and I hope people will honor the fallen and the wounded, and in particular, do their best to also honor first responders who are doing all they can to try to help us in these trying times. But before long, I think we got to be very close to the point where Durham and others will be dropping indictments. We're going to hear a lot about Emmett Sullivan and Sidney Powell and all that next week, I think. The Ukraine thing is going to continue on the boil. The Clinton Foundation and other charity frauds are going to remain under the microscope. And we're getting ever closer to the reality that the Democrats do not have a viable candidate to run in the November election for president. So there's going to be drama, I think, now coming out about who might replace Joe Biden. I mean, the ticket of Stacey Abrams and Joe Biden is
Losing
it's
prospect.
ridiculous.
I was speaking with Mike Moore last night, Charles, about some research he was doing into historical numbers of approval ratings around this time relative to the election and previous presidents. And he said the numbers say that Trump is in serious trouble.
Again, I think you have to look at the numbers state by state, and no set of numbers that we have, I think, properly estimates
Anything?
independent people and people who are afraid. You know, in New York City, if you were to walk around with a MAGA hat or tell a stranger that you're pro-Trump, chances are
They get pissed.
you'll get punched. Somebody's going to give you a hard time. So
Yeah.
in key parts of the world, of America, people are not being honest even now about their feelings. Now, I think Trump has lost some people who voted for him in 2016, but I think he's won far more than he's lost. I don't think he's in trouble with evangelicals at all and church and religious people. I think the decision to state that an abortion mill and various things that are deemed to be essential are essential, but religious institutions are not, is absurd.
Well, I think he had a big win the other day when he opened churches.
Right, that's exactly. So I
But
think
people were mad about canceling Easter.
as they should be, and not just Easter. And so I think he's pretty on solid ground there. I think he's making inroads, frankly, in states that he may not win ever, Illinois, but he's making inroads in many of these traditional Democrat stronghold places who finally say, you know what, all those people who've been saying that Democrats take us for granted, blacks and minorities, expecting them to just vote, they have a point. We're not better off in Detroit than we were 40 years ago. We're not better off in Boston. We're not better off in Toledo or Canton or Cleveland or Columbus or you name it. And so I think people are going to be more receptive to a change and more receptive to keeping Trump in as president. The big question is, there are more Republicans up in the Senate than there are Democrats. So a big question is,
What is this? This looks like a bar.
I think it's just a picnic area. It's very pretty back here, actually. I haven't been down here in I don't think I've
This
been.
doesn't look like a human sacrifice temple to you.
That's Epstein Island. Somebody brought Epstein Island up here.
Esplanade.
That's right. How do you want your 6-year-old cooked? I hope not.
I think these are apartments that were built after 9/11.
Yeah, most of them. Yep. But here, if we didn't say this is New York City, I mean, of course you see the Statue of Liberty, it's New York City. But if we didn't tell you that,
It's nice.
it's down here. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, I like New York City. A lot of people have this negative impression of it. Hopefully, from seeing all the things we've been showing everyone, people are appreciating some of the finer aspects. Like anything in life, it's mostly what you make of it.
Well, I maybe slightly disagree with you. I was preparing for this, doing what I often do to calm myself, search around for videos, and I've been telling you about this guy, Red Skelton, who's a very funny comedian, who I think would do a better job as a candidate than Joe Biden. But they had an appearance of this guy, Red Skelton, towards the end of his career on Johnny Carson.
That guy had like a entertainment vehicle. Skelton on Carson.
Yeah, and so they're yucking it up and telling jokes, and Skelton said, I got a serious question for you, Johnny. My mind works in very funny ways. What do you think happens in hell? What do people say in hell? Do they say they can't say go to hell to get rid of you? So,
Charles, this is a classic scene. Skateboarders getting hassled by security guards. They're supposed to now roll over them or something.
yeah. Well, these
Are the security guards hassling you guys for skating here?
Yeah, they just asked to leave.
But that's the way it always goes when you're skateboarding, right?
Yeah.
it's private property.
Yeah, they shouldn't be skateboarding there, but that's how skateboarders like to do it. Skateboard where they shouldn't, get yelled
That's
at,
right.
and then beat the person up.
So this is these are luxury apartments. Goldman Sachs is around here. Up and around.
This is Battery Park City, right?
I don't know if this itself is Battery Park City, maybe. This is built on reclaimed land.
What do you mean, like dug up from the
Yeah.
water? Oh, is that good?
Yeah.
What
Well,
are these cops doing other than nothing?
yeah, those people are not 6 feet apart.
Well, that's just what I mean. And I don't want to go and say, hey, go enforce it, but it's really arbitrary. This speaks directly to the police powers. And by the way, I meant to say this before. It's not just about mandatory injection that Dershowitz is totally wrong. Everything that they've told us to do is based on the state's police power to do stuff for the greater good. And they have yet to satisfy this requirement that it not be arbitrary. Because
Right.
if you're just using the stupid estimate of an unreliable scientist who's more interested in banging his married girlfriend than actually figuring out what's going on with the disease, it is arbitrary. What would you say is the definition of arbitrary? Just random, right?
Yeah, well, with no underlying logic or rationale, it can be
Boom,
defended.
hit right on the head.
Yeah, this is
It's a
something.
beautiful day, Charles.
Yeah, it is.
This reminds me of England.
You mean the park?
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Do you think they make specialized masks for people who are smoking?
Exactly. I was going to point out the genius Scruffy. He's got to pull the mask off to smoke.
Yeah.
Oh, this looks closed.
I think, yeah, this is a parking area, and then there's
Oh, this is not.
pedestrian walkway. It says.
Oh. Yeah, so I don't think that Andrew Cuomo has any authority to do what he's doing. I've been trying to reach Pam Geller to speak to her about the lawsuit that she has against de Blasio.
Yeah, I've been
Haven't been able to
unsuccessful
reach
as
her.
well. Oh, does this mean underground here?
Yeah, this doesn't look like it's going the way we want it
No,
to.
it is.
No, but we can't go underground. It's going to lose signal. Let's go back this way.
Okay.
Rector Place. Oh yeah, we're totally in the financial thick of it. Sanford Bernstein. That's a name you'll know, right?
Yeah, sure.
I dated a person in college who worked for Sanford Bernstein, and now she lives in England.
In England?
Yeah,
Sanford Bernstein was a good firm. I don't know if it's still in existence independently.
that was like literally 20-something years ago.
Did I bring up your age?
I'm just saying. Wow, look at this kid's got a Lamborghini, Charles.
It's pretty nice. And a mask.
That's amazing. Isn't it? Or no, maybe
McLaren.
it's a McLaren, yeah. Little
pretty
kid
nice.
McLaren. That strikes me as maybe dangerous to have your kid driving a car through
Across a red light. Yeah.
traffic. Wow.
Not looking forward.
Oh, is the dad remote controlling it, or is the kid driving it? The kid's driving it.
Kids driving it. Should we go that way and left, or what?
Sure. But doesn't that hit us right into the highway? I think we want to go. This is up, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah. So, Charles, I don't want to reveal, but I think we've got a very special interview coming up Wednesday, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We don't want to talk about who it's going to be.
Yeah, it's definitely an extremely high-profile person,
One of our biggest ever, maybe.
right, who would know all about what was happening when the deep state attempted to frame Trump. And this person is, we're hopeful that the interview does happen as planned, but we're very excited to welcome the person, and we're not going to disclose who it is
People don't
now.
want to miss it, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
And then, I mean, I guess as long as weather allows, you know, Cuomo said this morning that, you know, professional sports would open and that soon the whole
There we
city will open. So, all right, so this is a part of the financial center, right?
right.
So
Albany
we
Street.
want to go right, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. And then I'm in favor of probably
Wrapping up soon?
figuring out. Isn't this the hotel that was
Millennium?
the first
Marriott?
World Trade Center bombing? Wasn't it this Marriott or not?
Well, there was a Marriott right in front of the World Trade Center. And then there's one that looks like it's from 2001, A Space Odyssey.
All right. Well,
Oh
there's-
yeah, no, this Marriott here.
Was it that the one that was bombed in 1993?
No, there was another one in like almost touching the World Trade Center. This is not that one.
All right.
The brunch for my first wedding took place at this Marriott.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go. That's nice. Well, I would be in favor of finding a subway stop.
There's one right over there by the World Trade Center.
All right.
But they're going to give us a hard time for not having masks. The subway now is,
All right.
there's cops all over it waiting to beat you up if you try to get in there without a mask.
All right,
When
well,
it
then
was
I would be-
dangerous to go there,
Right.
they were nowhere to be seen.
All
Now
right.
that you're a ripe target to get a beat down, they're happy to oblige.
Okay. Well, then I'd be in favor of starting to walk north.
Yeah. Isn't that the direction we're walking?
We're walking east.
Ah.
But we
I
can.
get so confused down here. Oh, that's the direction we want to go, right?
Right, but do you want to walk along the highway here where it's going to be
No.
noisy, or do you maybe walk
No,
in?
we'll go over here.
Yeah.
We can go up one block.
Sure.
Susan Rice, Charles, let's talk about her. She's Phi Beta Kappa. She's Oxford double cross. She's listed as an unmasker. Let's talk about the unmasking, because Jim Acosta was trying to say some stuff to Ms. McEnany. How do you pronounce it?
McElhaney or something like
McElhaney?
that. So the issue with the first issue is whether Flynn was a target or whether he was somebody who was caught up in an investigation or in a wiretap of another foreign subject. That's the first question and
But let's
distinction.
just deal with this unmasking.
Well, you got to start there. You got to start there because if he was a target, he couldn't have been unmasked. See, that's what they're trying to hang their hat on. Then the second question is, what type of investigation was it? Was it a counterintelligence investigation or was it a criminal investigation? So we need answers to both of those questions. I think the reality it was an off-the-books investigation that began way before May of 2016 of anybody who might be associated with Donald Trump and available to be compromised should Donald Trump win. You know, I think that's really where I would be starting with it. And Jim Acosta, you know, you get to a point with somebody where you don't care what they think or say,
Yeah.
and I'm way past that
Yeah.
point. Jim Acosta, I don't care what Pee Wee Herman has to say. I don't care what Jim Acosta has to say. I just don't care.
Well, but the thing is, he was questioning that the unmasking was. I just want to back up because when they're talking about unmasking, this is absolutely social engineering. Because the unmasking is only an issue because we're all being spied on. And they're able to do it. This goes back to all this stuff that Bill Binney was talking about,
Right.
where they can look at your metadata, but they don't reveal your identity unless there is some reason to
Right,
do that.
right.
So we've moved past this debate about how objectionable it is that they're spying on all of us, and they're worried about is this guy getting unmasked or not. But for the average citizen, it moves you so far away from the actual issue of like, wait a minute, why the hell are they spying on everybody all the time?
Right.
And to this issue of did he get unmasked or not, I don't think people even know what we're talking about when we're talking about unmasking him.
All right, so unmasked technically, as my understanding, means that if there's a counterintelligence operation, let's wait because there's a counterintelligence operation which would involve surveilling a foreign national like Kislyak. And in the course of that surveilling, up pops an American. In the records, the official government records, the American's identity should be masked.
American one, person one.
Yeah, should be masked. And and it's a very serious crime.
But also, doesn't that mean that someone is listening to it and says, oh, this guy's American, mask it? So he's already known.
Right. Well, so yeah, people know, but the point is, in the records that are circulated widely, the identity should be masked. And we see how porous the distribution of records is. I believe I myself was a victim in the Peter Smith case of the
Illegal surveillance.
Well, of the FBI not having a legitimate reason to come talk to me until multiple stories start getting printed in the press at the instigation, likely of the FBI, the informal instigation of the FBI. So there's stories saying Ortel was involved with Peter Smith. That now gives the FBI the excuse to come see me, which they did. Right? That coordinated conspiracy of illegally, I think, spying on Americans, and then letting potentially damaging material, circulate in the public domain with the target of the unmasking or the target of the investigation not having an ability to defend himself or herself, runs so counter to the spirit of American jurisprudence as is enshrined in the Constitution. It's basically, I think, the big nail in the coffin came after 9/11 with the Patriot Act, when suddenly people across the spectrum were quite willing to say, you know what, if I've got nothing to hide, it shouldn't matter that the government's spying on me. And that's not true.
There's the 9/11 memorial right there, Charles.
That's
You're
why
not
I
even
bring it
allowed
up.
to go to it.
Well, that's why I bring it up. So, the second you go down that track, and remember, this is when my distant cousin was President of the United States, George W. Bush. What cartoon character does he remind you of? Incurious George.
Dopey.
Incurious George. Where's Waldo?
Where's Brano?
Exactly. So, in that time frame, we're all guilty of saying, you know what, this terrible threat, Al Qaeda, is so dangerous. We need to let the government have the power to monitor every keystroke of every device that we own and store it out there in various places. And then, if somebody gets drawn later into a potential criminal activity, we then would be able, without a search warrant, to look at all this information and weave together the predicate for a crime. And that's where we are today, which is not where we should be.
No. Yeah, and I mean, if they're talking about unmasking, that means that somebody in the intelligence community already knew that information about Flynn was involved in all this, and who knows? I mean, if they're telling us Joe Biden and Susan Rice were involved in unmasking, what are they not telling us about what they know about this information?
I don't know that this qualifies as a limited hangout or not, but when you contrast the question of what Michael Flynn may not have done with a far bigger question of why didn't Mueller, Comey, Rosenstein, and the IRS uncover the Clinton Foundation frauds in 2001 when they were investigating them starting in 2001 through 2005. Why couldn't they see obvious Clinton Foundation frauds then? What was the grand jury proceeding in New Orleans all about in 2009 that's in the Clinton Foundation filing?
Yeah, we'll get a cool shot of you in front of the World Trade Center,
Right.
Charles.
There you go. I'm staring at the Gucci store, which is still not open.
Yeah, I mean, that place, all these places have got to be losing a ton of money. The rent.
The rent's too damn high.
But that's going to change.
Right. So in 2009 through 11, why did Simpson Thatcher, why did Kamiki Gibson, why did Bruce Lindsay, who was a lawyer, why did Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and many other people miss the obvious fraudulent attempted reorganization of the Clinton Foundation in that time frame and afterwards.
Could it be because they're slow and delirious?
Because exactly, and they're trying to copy. They're setting it up. We got to get Barack reelected so he can have his foundation and do the same damn thing.
Right.
And let's get Sleepy Joe Foundation as well while we're at it. So, and then furthermore, why did it take Dopey James Comey so long? Not till let's go
All
one more.
of these streets are closed.
One more up. Why did it take him so long to open an investigation, multiple investigations into the Clinton Foundation? He was advised to do it. I wrote an article about it in March of 2015. O'Reilly started talking about it early May 2015. A private lawyer suggested to Comey that he do it in May of 2015, but the investigations were only opened in January of 2016. So where's the record of those investigations? That's real fraud, real corruption, sizable amounts of money involving very many politically sensitive people. The President of the United States, 2 heads of the FBI, likely the CIA. Where's the investigation on that?
I don't know. But you know, this guy, James Woolsey, who was the CIA director under Clinton, and who is an Oxford double-cross, you know, Rhodes Scholar type guy, he is a fellow at that London Policy Center. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I don't know much about James Woolsey. I think he's getting on in years. I believe he has a second wife, and you know, he's not acting 100%. But all these guys, this deep state establishment, both parties, why do we need 17 security agencies? How is it they can't seem to get anything right in advance, or a few things right in advance? How big are their budgets? How do they finance these things? Where is the transparency in all that? Where's the oversight of the people on all that? You know, are we sure that this deep state unbalance is a better approach to alternatives? I'm pretty sure it isn't.
I'm thinking the deep state comes out of this Cecil Rhodes 200-year manifesto, and they basically just go to people and say, are you with us or against us? And if you're with them, you get a job like Terry McAuliffe or Bill Clinton, or,
right, or
you know,
Susan Rice.
Susan Rice. And if you're against us, you get
Prison.
the FBI calling you, or social engineers bringing lawsuits against you and trying to ruin your business, ruin your reputation.
I think you're probably right, Jason. So this is, what would you call this? This is below
Financial
Tribeca?
district. I don't know.
Does it have a technical term?
This is actually an area of the city that I have very little experience with.
I think it's called FIDI, Financial District.
District, right. But you know what? They named it that when they started building apartments down here, so that you could have real estate agents have cool names like,
Right.
you know, Chelsea, Greenwich Village. These places have been neighborhoods forever. Turtle Bay.
Yeah.
But FIDI, they needed that to be able to. Oh yeah, the FIDI.
Yeah.
It's a great place to have an apartment. There's no taxis after 5 p.m. on Friday.
No
And
restaurants.
no restaurants, but other than
No
that, you're
food.
gonna love it. This is concrete jungle down here.
Yeah. A lot of new construction.
Oh, wait a minute, Charles. This thing, there was a weird art sculpture
Can we
here.
just sit for a second, maybe?
Sure, absolutely. I don't want to because I got a bunch of electronic
All right,
stuff in
okay.
my pockets.
I'll just sit here for a
That's
sec.
all right.
Catch
This
my
is,
breath.
I think Larry Silverstein owns this park.
Yes.
So what do we know about this place?
I don't know. I mean, this is there's a lot of construction in progress here. I don't know what this specific building is,
But this is the Silverstein Family Park, and there have been a variety of odd art items in that, I don't know what that is, rotunda or whatever that is.
well, this is where my quest and crusade against GE started, right over there.
What is that?
That's used to be the headquarters of Moody's, a rating agency, and I dropped a request, you know, for them to explain how they could give GE a AAA rating. When to me it seemed like it was a bankrupt fraud, and of course they
How do they like that question?
they didn't like it at all. They're like, "F you."
I'm surprised. Usually People love those kind of challenging questions
Right.
that you already know the answer to.
Right. So I'm ready to go walk again. I just wanted to briefly catch
Sure.
my breath.
It's for some reason today I'm having a really difficult time checking if we're still live. This other phone is not behaving. I think it's still going because there's been no indication of disrupt. I hope it is. I don't know. Yeah, let's head back.
All right. And get a mask, a free mask.
Well, that's another thing that, oh yeah, you were saying that the security system is porous.
Yeah.
And I was going to say it's about as porous as Alyssa Milano's knitted face
Yeah,
mask.
I know. What an
Did you
idiot
see that
I did.
picture? I mean, she is so stupid. Why? And it's, you know what? There's nothing wrong with being stupid, but when you're stupid and confident and vocal,
Yeah, she's stupid.
that's a problem.
Stupid is as stupid does. We did Forrest Gump, didn't we?
Yes.
I think we did.
with-
Forrest Chump?
With W.
We-
Forrest Chump was W. Bush.
Was it Bush or Clinton?
It was W. Bush, I'm pretty sure. You know what?
Speaking of that-
Somebody sent me a nice email, Charles, wanting the book, so
Yeah.
I've got to get back onto the book. But speaking of that, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I mean, it's a good time to bring up that book again. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to go, for me and for you, actually just go back all these things, over all these posters that you've done and shows that we've done together, and try to organize them.
Well, here's my commitment. I will, tonight, go back to the book printing website that I had been looking at,
Uh-huh.
and I will try to put together the right combination of number of I mean, there's so many options. It makes the head spin as far as the weight of
Right.
the paper and the glossiness, and all of this affects the price. And it was coming out really expensive, but I will
Here's
go
your car,
back.
Jason. Right
Which,
there.
this? That's not mine.
Pretty nice car.
Yeah, why would they park that on the street from New Jersey? I guess it doesn't matter now. Although, no, there's a lot of people around who would mess with your car.
I think so.
I will, tonight, go back to that book printing website and make a concerted effort to put something together that, the problem is it was just coming out to be really expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't tell you, but I just think that the quality of the artwork is so high.
Thank you.
And as I told you, when I think at the peak of my map collection, I had around 150 museum quality framed maps. And you know, obviously you need a pretty big place to show those. But when you get a large number of things that are done by the same person, you know, and you put them all together, it just can be really impressive, frankly. So, the
Did you-
school of Jason Goodman.
The political period. Charles, did you see that wine store was doing
Contact.
delivery at the door there?
Yeah, lots of them do that. Yeah.
Now, I'm curious to see what this contact tracing API in the iPhone is going to do. Like, why are they allowed to suddenly have all these contact tracers? Was there a vote about that? I mean, that seems
No.
like really a violation. Is it the Fourth Amendment that protects us from undue search?
Unreasonable search and safety.
So, I mean, aren't they doing that?
I think they have done it. Done it since 2002.
I bet you Steve Jobs wouldn't have let them add that. I don't think Tim Cook, he's a little too political, hanging out with Robert De Niro. We did a
Really?
show with Diana West where Tim Cook, Barack Obama, and Robert De Niro had dinner in Tribeca in like 2019 or something. What were they cooking up?
Who paid the check?
Probably Tim Cook.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe De Niro. He's a restaurateur. Probably nobody. Those guys probably all.
Yeah, probably
The courthouse is right down there.
the Clinton Foundation probably paid for it,
Something like
or
that.
the taxpayers.
Exactly. So Charles, how exactly does it work that all these different foundations, I mean, it definitely seems like the magic recipe involves a crooked law firm, or more than one,
Crooked accounting
a
firms.
501c3 that's abused. What's the recipe? What are these guys all doing?
Well, so technically speaking, a charity has to be an actual formal organization. It can be a corporation, it can be an association, a trust, but it has to exist and have an identity separate and apart from its creators. It can't just be at the beck and call of Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton. right? So they didn't do that. The first step is to make sure that what you say is a foundation is not, in fact, independent. The next step is to operate in a jurisdiction where you control or heavily influence whether the
Investigators?
and prosecutors are going to come after you. And if so, you also control and can influence the judicial process. You control the judges in whatever location. So with that secure, which is I think a long-term plan of the Clintons and then the Obamas, with that secure, what you do is you arrange for large sums of money to be sent towards your foundation. And you
From
offer,
anywhere.
From anywhere. And you offer up the American donors the ability to gain a tax deduction for their donations. Whoops, yeah.
There's a swamp right there,
Yeah.
Charles. You're going to want to drain that.
Got to drain that. And so the wrinkles include the following: that a really crooked one will say to Jason Goodman, "Why don't you give me $100,000? Well, let's say you're a billionaire. Give me $100,000. I'll give you a slip of paper that said you gave me $10 million. And you can then take that slip of paper to the IRS and get $4 million back. So you've given me $100,000 and you get $4 million back. That sounds pretty good to you.
So the document to the IRS, the 990, is going to show more money than actually was.
Less money.
Less money.
Less money. So
Okay.
the first trick is you have to control the incoming and outgoing. You have to control the decision as to how much money you say is going to hit the foundation's books.
Right.
Now, to get all that done, you've got to have an accounting firm like BKD that really should be DDB, deaf, dumb, and blind. I mean, you have an accounting firm that is willing to surrender any shred of its integrity at the altar of political expediency and corruption. So, key that you have that. Then you have to have idiot conflicted trustees: Bruce Lindsay, Chelsea Clinton, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, etc. Because you're playing a game.
The Western Union headquarters?
Yeah.
So you're playing a game that does what?
That you'll never get caught. That you'll never get caught. Which was the game they played. That, while they're alive, they won't get caught. Because one little nuance that's very different about charities is if you're found to have gone outside your authorized purpose and diverted funds in material amounts, and especially if you've never filed an initial tax return in 1997, you do have the ability, as the IRS and the Department of Justice, to go all the way back even before 1997 at some date in the future, even if that means 20 years from the date of creation or 30 years or whatever. So they have just assumed that they'd never get disciplined. That was their bet.
But I mean, beyond the Clintons, this seems to be a template. Like
Right.
Murdoch has a foundation, Murdoch Children's Research Institute or something like that, that's researching how to make a coronavirus vaccine. And then he's using Fox News to basically socially engineer everybody in the world through Alan Dershowitz to be prepared to forcibly accept a vaccine. Seems like a conflict to me.
Well, I think in the case of the Murdochs, they are probably closer to doing it correctly than these political foundations. The political founders, the Blairs, the Clintons, the Obamas, they don't have legitimate large net worths. The Murdochs do.
But how can they run news that benefits their nonprofit foundation, profit from the news? What's going to happen with this vaccine once they have it?
Again, the they is a question. So I haven't studied the Murdoch foundations carefully enough to give you a precise answer, but I think, I believe the real exposure that a Murdoch or a Gates or others would have is that the donations that they make to the political foundations, it's their responsibility, the donors, to make sure that the political foundations are in fact real charities. They can't say, well, the devil made me do it, or I didn't check what was in the letter that I signed.
The devil made me do it might be a valid excuse.
Maybe truth. Very close to the truth. They can't legitimately say that and get away with it because the way in which the IRS has set up the regulation of charities is to have the donors, the private foundation donors, take responsibility and keep responsibility for ensuring that when they say they gave money to a public charity, the Clinton Foundation, that in fact it was a public charity, which it never was. So I think one of the reasons that Bill Gates is looking like he's aged so much is that he probably figures out now, has figured out a while ago, that these problems ain't going away. And they're getting bigger. And the fact that he's refused to regularize his Gates Foundation papers places him squarely in legal jeopardy with one of the largest pocketbooks out there to pay for this mess.
Well, and I mean, from his standpoint, it's certainly better for us all to stay locked inside or die from a virus, potentially of his creation, than for him to lose all his money and go to jail. That's a bad outcome for
It would
Bill
not be a
Gates.
preferred outcome for somebody who's never been in jail and somebody who's as rich as he is and as old as he is.
Charles, we're at the 2-hour mark and the batteries have been performing well. I do think the software upgrade has had some impact on battery life.
That's good.
And we've only had that sound problem once, so perhaps it is a software bug and not... These are all cop cars.
Yeah.
Perhaps... Oh, watch out for that. I'm telling you, it's
right here.
It's a dog day afternoon as far as the not cleaning up the...
Well, I think also at night, remember when we were in Bosnia at night, the wild dogs were...
Sunday, guys.
Same to you.
Have a good one.
You too.
You too.
Whoa, watch out.
Yeah, I must unplug this. Whoops. Anyway, when we were in Bosnia,
Remember that night there were
under
those...
sniper fire.
Yeah, right. When we arrived under sniper fire. But no, at night outside the nice hotel where we were staying, there were wild dogs, packs of wild dogs.
Yes, barking.
Right, and I think there's a certain amount of it. I saw today on the street, somebody had run over or stepped on a rat. And I
Oh.
think the rat and, animal population keeps growing, whereas the human population is not growing. And in addition, there's not as much restaurant refuse.
Right.
So the
what
rats
they
are
eating?
more hungry.
Right. I agree with that. All right, well, Charles, we got to navigate some sort of more dangerous roads. I don't know, should we wrap up
think
the
we should wrap it
broadcast
up,
here?
yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Please remember, it's very important for people to become sponsors. If you watch every day and you're watching on YouTube or elsewhere, please go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Become a sponsor. There's a huge library of sponsor-exclusive content, and I hope to have the technical... It's been transparent to viewers. No one has seen that, but should have it sorted out tomorrow. And I'll see everybody then. Have a great night. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.